you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update to the Simplar build, the Stamina Templar for the Scalebreaker DLC. Now, we've tried to keep this as simple as possible, hence the name of the build. So this doesn't actually require any trial loot, but we are going to obviously go over some options. This is focused upon being easy to use, having good sustain and survivability, and above all, making the rotation simple. So, first of all, we're going to go into the stats, pop a potion, get our resistance buff on. We are on 10k max magicka, 16.7k max health, and 31.8k max stamina, almost 32 there. We are on 1397 recovery, which is almost 1.4k, really, really high, and that's going to go up, obviously, with our bonuses to our passives and such, and one of our skills that is running at the moment, which you can't see in the stats. We are on 4.6k weapon damage, which will go higher, and 152.9% crit chance. Resists again, since that ran out. 22.4k spell resistance and 19.4k physical, which is massive for a stamina DPS. Now we're putting 64 of our points into stamina for our attributes. You can alter this if you feel a little squishy, but just note, by the way, if you do drop your stamina and put your health back up, you will of course lose flat damage overall, so it's sacrifice to gain, depending on how comfortable you actually are. We're using Artaeum Takeaway Broth. You can of course use Dubious Command Throne if you prefer. You'll lose the health recovery, and you'll lose a little bit of stamina recovery as well, but the flat stats will be roughly the same. They're not too far away, and they're a little cheaper to make. But of course, if you are in a situation where you have really, really high sustain, you've got lots and lots of bonuses running, then of course you can use this. This is the flat stuff, and this is really, really, really high on your stats. This puts us up to 19.3k max health and 34k stamina. Note our recovery has gone down quite significantly. However, like I said, in certain situations, maybe for example you have loads of spider dwellers going everywhere, you've got master staves, you've got an abundance of synergies, you may not need the recovery food because we have very high recovery in our skills. Again, they will come later. A couple more things to note, by the way, of course, we're a stage 4 vampire. You can go stage 3 if you want, it's up to you. I personally never changed from stage 4 because I can't bother to pay loads and loads of money and resources to keep changing my vampire level, and honestly I don't really struggle in fire. But if you do, you can bring that down a bit. We are using the Shadow Munderstone, and of course we've gone over the food. We'll put the food back for now, but that is a choice that you can make. You can have that stuff, or Dubious Command Throne. Now I'm going to explain the skills in detail. These will be quite in-depth, so if you are familiar with the Templar already and you already know what all this is, fair enough, you're welcome to skip. But if you do skip, you will run the risk of asking questions that have already been answered. So all those questions in the comment section, if they've already been answered, they won't be answered again. So it's your risk if you skip using the timestamps. We're using Ring of Preservation. Yes, a rather unusual one to have on your front bar, but we're using it nonetheless. This is in a Fighter's Guild skill line. It's a second ability to unlock. Starts off as Circle's Protection. Morph it to Ring of Preservation. Now this is expensive, so for God's sake, do not spam it. But while this is down on the ground, anyone caught inside of here, you can see the heals going mad already. I haven't even got to that part yet. Anyone caught inside this will have minor protection, which will be 8% reduction to incoming damage. Also, they will get minor endurance, which will give them a 10% increased stam recovery. And they will heal once every 0.5 seconds, and that is of course scaled off of your offensive stats, so your flat resources. So higher stamina, the higher weapon damage, the more that's going to do. And this is really, really strong. It does consider people's heal and receives, however, so you could get people healing more than you. But, ignore that one. Let's put this down. That, you don't want to spam it, but in situations where you do need the extra heals, that is very, very helpful, especially during execute phases and such like that. However, above all, this is actually here for passives, which we will get to later. It's for Fighters Guild passives, and its utility slot. It's a win-win. Next up is also in a Fighters Guild skill line. This is Barb Trap. Fifth ability to unlock, starts off as Trap Beast, morph it to Barb Trap. This used to be called Rearming Trap, but now it's called Barb Trap. It has changed a little bit. It used to be 6 seconds, then it would rearm for another 6 seconds. But now instead it lasts 18. And it's really, really powerful. It's got a decent single target hit initially, when it hits the target that it's supposed to immobilize, if it can be immobilized. But also, for the 18-second duration, it will do over 40k damage. That's not including crits. It's really, really strong. And while it's active, it will grant you minor force, increasing all of your critical damage that you do by 10%. Really, really handy indeed. You've got to make sure this is up on the target at all times. Very simple application. Drop it on the ground. It will immobilize the target's feet. However, if it can't be immobilized, it will still fire, it will still do the damage, and it will still grant you the minor force. Really important, that one. Next up, of course, is Consuming Trap. This is filth. This got drastically altered in Scalebreaker. Really, really powerful. This is the first skill you get in the game. You don't even need a skill point until you morph it. Starts off as Soul Trap. It's now Consuming Trap. This is the one we want to use. The other one is for AoE. You can use that if you prefer, but this one has got more single target. And for each enemy that dies while it's got an effect on it, you will actually gain back 20% of all 3 resources. So for us, we'll end up getting about 6.3, almost 6.4k stand back, 2k magicka, and we will heal as well. So this is very, very powerful, especially in ad pulls, where you can put it on multiple targets, they all die, you get loads of resources back, and heal. Really, really strong. But above all, of course, this now scales off of your max stats. So instead of it doing magic damage and that's it, if you have a high magic bar, this will do magic damage. If you have a high stamina bar, this will do physical damage. So for us, it's a very, very simple single target damage over time ability, and this also helps to our sustain because it costs magicka. It doesn't cost stamina. These abilities here, these damage over time ability here, this heal type protection ability costs stamina as well. Our next ability, our spammable, is going to cost stamina, but this here does not. Now, to notice what this looks like, it's very simple. Where's the target dummy? You. There you go. On the target for 10 seconds, and it does damage over time. A lot of damage over time, in fact. But once it's gone, it's gone. You have to reapply it again. If the target dies, that's when you get your resources back. So big ad pull's really handy. Now this here is our main spammable, Biting Jabs, of course. This is in the Adric Spear skill line. First ability to unlock, starts off as Puncturing Strikes, morph it to Biting Jabs. This is the stamina morph of it. This is actually really, really powerful. Not only does it give us our ability to do AoE and single target at the same time, but it also gives us a crit bonus. So this can alter what you choose to use as potions, but we'll get to that a bit later on. This initially does damage to, obviously, the first target hit. Very simple. He gets hit for lots of damage. Great. But it also works in area of effect. But the front target, the one here, the one that you're aiming at mostly, will be the one that gets hit for the most. So the rest of them, you'll notice the numbers are lower. He gets hit for loads. They get hit for a percentage of it. Now, this also gives us Major Savagery. So you would get this from your potions. But if we just apply it, you can see here we've got no buffs. Not really, apart from our Mundustone, Vampire, and Food. Major Savagery. How handy is that? Now, of course, if we're using this on our front bar, and we swap to the back, we'd lose it, wouldn't we? Nope. Stays with us until it runs out. So if our rotation is on point, we can actually keep that buff up 100% of the time for our front bar and our back bar, and never actually need a potion to do that. But that is when we get to the potions, we'll go over what choices you could have. Now, next up, of course, is Rending Slashes. This is in our dual wield skill line. I had to think about that. Rending Slashes starts off as Twin Slashes. Morph it to Rending Slashes. Quite cheap. It's a single target damage over time, much like Soul Trap is, except this is obviously a cost for stamina. This does a bleed effect, which is physical damage over 10 seconds. But remember, bleeds were changed in Scalebreaker. They no longer ignore resistances, so penetration values will consider. However, there are 2 morphs for this. Rending Slashes does an initial hit of around 3.1k. The Blood Craze version has exactly the same damage over time, so you lose nothing there. But the initial hit is a small percentage lower. So if you want to go for the highest you possibly can as far as damage output is concerned, you want to go for this one. If you go for the other one, the initial hit will probably be around 2.4k-ish. It's not that much lower, but top end, obviously, that can escalate, especially with buffs and bonuses and such. But you will be granted a heal every 2 seconds while this is active. So you've got one morph with a slightly less initial hit, but exactly the same dot with a heal, or you've got the other morph with a higher initial hit, same damage output for the dot. Your choice. But this needs to be on the target at all times as well. This, and this needs to be on the target at all times, and this needs to be spammed while they're running. Now, our ultimate on the front bar and back bar, but we'll get to that in a moment. There will be choices. We're using Flawless Dawnbreaker. Now, this is in the Fighters Guild skill line. It needs Fighters Guild 10 to unlock it. So just bear that in mind. You will need to take some time to unlock this. You'll have to kill Daedra, Undead, all that good stuff to level this up. It costs 119 ultimate, It lasts for 6 seconds, and it does have a cast time. Much like Bite and Jabs does actually have a channel time, this does as well. That means you can't bar swap it. And if you do, you will cancel it. Much like this one. So if we do some jabs here, we'll do our finish, and then it's done. And then we can swap bars if we want. But if you do this, it will stop. Same as if you block as well, it will stop. Dawnbreaker is now just like that. Much, much shorter duration. The cast time is only 0.4 seconds, so 400 milliseconds is really, really quick. But this was altered to make it a little bit smoother, and obviously to add some counterplay for PvP as well, because before you could just animation cancel it and no one would see it coming, whereas now you do. So for those of you that use it in PvE, which we will be doing, just make sure you don't bar swap as soon as you cast it, because it will not fire. Now, this does initial damage to all targets caught inside of this within 10 meters of you, in front of you in fact, but it will still also do a 6-second damage over time effect to all targets caught in it as well. And when it has been activated, your weapon damage will be increased by 300 for 20 seconds. It's a very, very cheap ultimate. It's really, really powerful. Most builds I use this as an oh shit button. This one I'm actually actively using it to keep that 300 weapon damage up as much as possible. Now there are other options for ultimates. We are going to get to those after, mostly after the gear. So don't panic, I will go over other things. Now Repentance is on the bar because it's crazy. This is in the Restore and Light skill line. Third ability unlock, starts off as Restoring Aura, morph it to Repentance. This is very, very simple. This will heal you for 3k and restore 3k stamina for every corpse that you consume. And this is free as well. 12 meter radius, and this will just suck the life out of dead bodies. Can you do that? And give your resources back. Now, this is the thing. It doesn't just heal you. It heals your allies as well. However, the stamina is only for you. So if there are people around you, say for example there's 6 bodies on the ground, well, you just now healed for 18k. And so did your friends. But you got the stamina back, not them. So this is absolutely broken. Very, very powerful in big ad pulls, especially alongside of our soul trap. So our sustain is really, really high. But you've got to use this. It's absolutely crazy. And while it's slotted, of course, you get minor endurance, minor intellect, and minor fortitude, increasing your health, stamina, and mag recovery by 10%. Now, if you are not actively using this enough, there's no ads, single target fight, what can you do? If you can't use this, swap it out for Circle of Protection. Double bar it. There's a very good reason for that, which will come up in the passives. Failing that, if you want, you can obviously put Echoing Vigor on. Echoing Vigor is in the Assault skill line. You will need Alliance points for this. And I've lost it. There it is. Second ability to unlock starts off as Vigor, morph it to Echoing Vigor. Now, here is the trick with this. If you are in a really, really extreme situation, healers are going down, or you just need some protection and heals for the group, not only will this heal you and your group, but so will Vigor, and they'll double stack on top of each other. They're very, very powerful combined, so you actually have room to slot both if you need to. In an emergency, you can do both and help everybody out. But again, for the most part, you want this to be Repentance, or if you don't need the Vigor, and you're just going flat out as much damage as possible, again, it'll be explained in the passives, double bar, Circle of Protection. You don't need it for anything else anyway, so this is really, really handy to have this bonus on both bars. Now, Poison Injection. Fifth ability to unlock in the bow skill line starts off as Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. This is very, very simple. This fires a single target hit at the target, and then does poison damage over time for 10 seconds. Doesn't get any simpler than that. But you do want to keep it on the target at all times, so don't let it run out for too long. Make sure you reapply it as soon as possible. Not only does this do high damage over time, but this also gets stronger the lower the target's health. So at 50% or less, they will actually take up to 100% more damage. So this is your passive execute. Next up is Blazing Spear. Starts off as Spear Shards, morph it to Blazing Spear. This does magic damage, so that's not what we really want it for. What we want it for is, throw that spear, I'm sure you've seen it before. Your allies can pick this up and gain 3, 9, 6, 0 magicka or stamina, depending on which one of their resource pools is the highest. So if you're stamina DPS, you pick this up, you get that in stam. If you're magic or DPS, you get it in magic. If you're a tank, it depends on which one you've got, either way or the other. Same for healers as well. Could be a stam healer, you never know. This is very, very useful. It's going to be in our rotation the whole time. This is mostly for passives. Very strong passives. But you must keep this running. It will help your group with resources, and it will put out a nasty amount of damage. Not in this description, in the passives description, which we're coming to in a moment. Restore and Focus is broken as hell. Absolutely mental. Restore and Light, 5th ability you unlock, starts off as Rune Focus, morph it to Restoring Focus for the Stamina Morph. Now you saw me do this already earlier. That is my little rune, and if I'm inside of it, I have a certain bonus. What bonus do we have? We have Major Ward and Major Resolve, which is the base major resistance buff in the game. They do not stack. So if you have another one, it won't stack over top of this. This will stay with us, and the other one will just be ignored. So this will give us 5280 resistances for both spell and physical. And every 1 second, we get 240 stamina back. This doesn't, however, show in our stats. So if you look here, you see, let's put a potion on so we can see all of it. We are sitting currently on 1397. But, put this down, you don't see any difference. It is there, it just doesn't show in the stats. There are a lot of things in this game, skills, buffs, passives, and gear that don't show in your stats. So there are a lot of videos out there from people that are claiming, oh, look at my stats, they're really, really high. This means it's better than that one. Not necessarily. There are lots of things out there that do not show in those stats. You have to be aware of what your passives and bonuses actually do, because they can't record everything. Now, also, this is the only skill in the game that has Major Ward and Major Resolve that is boosted. Because while standing inside your rune, no, if you leave, you still keep the buff, but there's an extra buff. Go in again. You can see there's two that look very, very similar. I'll show you in here so it's not confusing. Restore and Focus, and Circle Bonus. We step out, we will lose the bonus. Step back in, we get it back. Why is this important? Again, I told you it's the only buff of its kind that buffs the major buff of this type. While standing in the rune, the buff itself, the resistance buff, is increased by a massive 50%. So we don't have 5280, we have a lot more, which is why if you look at our stats right now, we are on a massive 22k resistances, and it goes down to 14 without it. So put that on, whoops. If we move out of it, we still keep our resistance buff, but we lose the bonus to it, which will put us at 19.8 and 16.8. There's a substantial difference there. Now, as you can see, this is a big resist buff, and this is a protection buff. And yes, they do stack. So that is really, really important. But there is another minor protection buff that we're going to be able to get from our passives if we're not utilizing this. This is just for our group. So you can see we've got big resistance and stacking heal bonuses and all that good stuff at the same time as having very simple spammables and a couple of dots. Straightforward so far. Arrow Barrage is next. That is in our bow skill line. Second ability to unlock. Starts off as Volley, morph it to Arrow Barrage. This was changed in Scalebreaker. Ender's Hail now lasts longer. Arrow Barrage has a wider area and higher damage. The duration is very short, however. So you have to make sure you're on top of your rotation so this doesn't fall off for very long. This is very, very simple. Arrows fire from the sky, and everything caught inside of here will take damage. And when I say everything, I mean everything. There is no cap. As you can see here, they're getting whooped. Every single target is getting hit. Really simple. Keep that up all the time. Now, of course, we are utilizing Dawnbreaker on both bars. Now, the back bar is for the passives. The front bar is for the passives and the active. And now we're going to get into passives. Remember, this is Fighter's Guild, so keep an eye out for that when I get to that part. Adric Spear, first of all. We want to use this because this increases your critical damage by 10% for having an Adric Spear ability slotted. This will also increase your damage done to blocking targets. Now, why is this important? This is an Adric Spear ability, so this gives us a 10% extra crit damage bonus on the front bar. And this is also one, so this gives us a bonus on the back bar. This will grant you minor protection for 6 seconds, reducing the damage taken by 8%. This is broken as hell for us. Now, remember this gives minor protection to your group, if anyone's standing inside of here, for a short period of time. Well, using this, or this, will give us minor protection ourselves. So we don't have to cast this to get that buff. We can have it all the time. You only cast this if your group needs it. So you're applying some utility. And why does this work this way? Because, very, very simply, if you use an Adric Spear ability, you get 6 seconds worth of it. There it is, minor protection. Now, on the front bar, we're going to be using this quite a lot, so it'll keep refreshing. On the back bar, we're going to do some shapes, throw some skills out, throw the spear. Oh, it's back up again. Front bar, other shapes, use it again. We have 100% uptime on minor protection as a DPS. That's disgusting. Very, very strong indeed. So, pay attention to that passive. You must get it. This one is very, very important, and this is also why we're using the spear on the back bar. So far, we're using Spear on the back bar for the 10% increased crit damage on the back. We're using it for the uptime on minor protection for front and back. And this is very important. When you deal damage with an Adric Spear ability, you have a 25% chance to deal an additional 5822 physical damage or 2060 magic damage. This is based on whichever one is highest. So for us, we're stamina, so obviously the physical damage is higher. This effect can happen once every 0.5 seconds. So although this skill doesn't do a lot of damage since it's scaled off Magicka, this Adric Spear ability, doing damage every second, can proc that free damage. And overlapping our jabs can also have an extra proc. So if you keep this up and you keep these up, you've got increased reduction to incoming and increased outgoing at the same time. They stack up. It's absolutely mental. Very, very important passives. Make sure you get these. This also increases your weapon damage by 6% and spell resistance by 2640. That's why our spell resistance is higher, because on a Templar we have really high spell resistance. But above all, we have a very high flat weapon damage. The Templar is very good at survivability, heals as well, and of course weapon damage, as in a flat weapon damage bonus, and crit damage. So we are, well, it says it for itself, balanced warrior. We have everything all in one place. We can survive, we can heal, we can sustain, we can hit hard, and we can crit hard. It's really, really nice. Now, Dawn's Wrath, this increases the duration of our Sunfire, Solar Flare, Eclipse, and Nova abilities by 2 seconds. We are not actually using any of these, but if you are in a situation where you are required to help the group survive via mitigation and you need a Nova, then get Nova, morph it to Solar Prison, and put this on your back bar. That will have a higher duration because of this passive. It is quite an expensive one, but it will save the group and supply them with a nice hard-hitting synergy and stun as well. This will actually apply major maim to the targets affected. So if you put this on a target, they will have their damage reduced by 30%. Don't put it on your group, put it on the target. But if you can angle it right so that people can take a synergy, obviously that's going to be a benefit. This is not always used by us, in fact rarely used by us, but it depends on your group. If you're lacking Templars and you're the only one there, you're going to want a Nova occasionally. So this passive is going to help for that. When casted a Dawn's Wrath ability, you grant yourself 3 ultimate, and this can happen once every 6 seconds. We're not actually using any. I normally do, but this particular setup, I have opted to not use any, because Power of the Light has been dropped on this particular build, because quite frankly, extra jabs did more damage. But if you choose to, if your group requires it, if you need Power of the Light in your rotation to be able to reduce the penetration resistances even of the target via Minor Fracture and Minor Breach, and nobody else is bringing it, you can of course slot it here instead and just cast it as soon as you swap to the front bar. Failing that, you can cast it on the back bar before you swap to the front. It's entirely up to you. If you do that, you will need this passive, but if you don't, you won't, because we're not using it. Did try with Solar Barrage as well, was very nice for light attacks, but above all, this particular layout was of higher performance. But I will go over some swap outs when we get to the gear. Casting a Dawn's Wrath ability also grants your group minor sorcery, so you can actually increase everybody's spell damage by 10% if you do cast one of those abilities from the skill line. Again, unless you have Power of the Light on, we don't have it, so you won't necessarily need this. But again, if you are the only Templar in the group, you don't have Minor Fracture or Minor Breach, you will be utilizing this skill, and you will get both of these passives. So I would still buy them. And this one, of course, reduces the health, magicka, and stamina, and ultimate cost of all of your abilities by 5%. That is why all of our abilities are so cheap. Simple as that. Restore and Light, you won't need all of these, but a couple of them are really, really handy. Now, this increases your healing effects from your Restore and Light abilities by up to 12% in proportion to the severity of the target's wounds. This will be beneficial for that. So you will need to get this passive for Repentance. While standing in your Cleansing Ritual, Rune Focus, or Rite of Passage area of effects for up to 4 seconds after leaving it, so the whole time you're in, or if you leave it quickly, you will gain Minor Mending, increasing your healing done by 8%. we do, of course, stand in our rune focus if we can help it. And if we fire off a vigor, or if we cast circle protection, our heals, or from our repentance as well actually, our heals will be stronger. Our healing done. Any heals that we do are stronger while inside this rune focus. Very, very nice passive indeed. And of course, when I get to the racial passives, that's going to help even more. This one here, you will not actually need. This one here, however, when we resurrect allies, we actually res 20% faster than anybody else in the game. Excluding the Necromancer Ultimate, of course, because that's instant, but our actual activated resurrection ability is faster than everybody else's. And of course, they return with more health than they normally would. And although it costs you a soul gem to resurrect someone, you can fill an empty one by picking someone up, so it can cost you nothing. Now, we are, of course, using dual wield on every single one of these passives if you can help it. This will increase the damage of your dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So our light attacks, our heavy attacks, our rend and slashes all increases in damage the lower the target's health. This increases the weapon damage of our offhand weapon by 6%. Offhand weapons are weaker than main hand weapons, which is why you want to go Nirnhoned, if any weapons at all, on the main hand, not the off, because the bonus is higher. Reduces the stamina cost of dual wield abilities by 15%. Gives you a 15% damage bonus when attack and stun, immobilize, disorient, or silence enemies. Now this one here gives you bonuses depending on what types of weapons you are holding. We're using one axe and one dagger. Yes, I know they look like two swords, but that's a costume. We're using one axe and one dagger. So we have a higher crit rating for the one dagger we're holding, and we have a 14k damage over time effect with an 8% chance to do so from the axe. But of course you want every single one of these. This will give you a damage bonus of up to 12% for enemies at long range. Obviously, on the run up to a fight, you may be running out your volley or your poison injection or your light attacks or whatever on the run in, or even inside mechanics when you're moving in and out as well. You will, of course, get a damage bonus for that. This increases your weapon crit rating by 1095. You'll notice it's exactly the same as the dagger, so we have the same crit on both bars. This reduces the stamina cost of bow abilities by 15%. They are expensive, so you want to get the cost down. Dealing damage with a light or heavy attack from your bow will give you a 5% increase to damage for your bow abilities, including your light and heavy attacks, for 5 seconds. Every single one of them you do will restart the timer, and they'll stack up to 5 times, and then it will constantly restart as long as you're still doing light attacks or heavy attacks within the timer. But if you stop, they'll fall off. Now for us, we're not a bow build. We are using a bow on the back, so we will utilize this via a couple, maybe 3 occasionally, light attacks. We won't get the full bonus, but we will still benefit from this nonetheless. As you can see, the little symbol there that says Hawkeye, that's what you're looking for in the buff timers. So we'll hit this dummy here. As you can see, the pink circle with the eye in it with the number 1. Now it says 2, 3, and we're going 4, 5 with a 5-second timer. Every time you recast a light attack or a heavy, it will restart, and you keep the bonus the whole time for all your skills of that particular weapon type. When it runs out, it's gone. So on our back bar, we will be using skills. We'll be using one here, then a light attack, one there, then a light attack. We'll use about 3 or 4. So sometimes we can have 4, sometimes we can have 3. Depends. But you want to get that passive nonetheless, because a bonus some of the time is better than no bonus at all. This obviously is very important. Hasty retreat. If you dodge roll on your bow bar, 4 seconds of faster running. So there's your evasion there. Do not dodge roll too quickly, because if you dodge roll once, then dodge roll again instantly, you'll get a increased cost. And the more you dodge roll, the more expensive it gets. So leave about a 4-second gap between each one if you can help it. Otherwise, you will get penalized for that. It's tricky. Light armor, of course, we are using 1 piece of light armor, so we will get these 3 passives here. The others require 5 pieces, so ignore these 2. But these here will give us a effectiveness against snares, so we don't actually get slowed down quite so much. We have a reduced sprint cost. We have increased mag recovery and reduction to cost, which we do need because we are using magic abilities. And of course we get spell damage resistance, which is quite nice. Medium, we are using 5 pieces of medium on every single one of these. These are really important. This one increases your weapon crit rating for each piece worn. This one increases your stam recovery and reduction to cost. This reduces your cost of sneak, and it reduces your detection size as well. This is not that important for PvE unless of course you're using thieving skills. Maybe you're stealing off of people, you don't want to get caught, or you want to sneak a lot, or maybe you're in PvP a bit, or maybe even March of Sacrifices, because there is a sneak phase in that particular dungeon actually. So I would encourage you to get them, but they're not essential to the build. This one is. This increases your weapon damage by 15%, and this of course increases your movement speed and reduces the cost of dodge roll. So we sprint faster, we dodge roll cheaper, all that good stuff. Just bear in mind, of course, this weapon damage bonus here is a 15% bonus, plus for being a Templar from our Adric Spear skill line, the Balanced Warrior, we actually have a 6% weapon damage bonus as well. And we have increased weapon damage on our main hand. So far, we've got really high stacking weapon damage bonuses. We're using one piece of heavy, so you want these 3 pieces. This will increase your physical and spell resistance for each piece worn. This will increase your health recovery and give you back resources, 108 magic and stamina once every 4 seconds while taking damage. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it does count. And this increases your health by 2% for each heavy piece worn as well. We're wearing 1, so we'll take the health bonus. We are, of course, a vampire. You want to get supernatural recovery to increase your mag and stamina recovery by 10% at stage 2 or higher. And you want undeaf at stage 3 or higher. This will actually reduce the amount of damage you take while under 50% health. So the lower we go, the tankier we get, and our survival goes up. Just remember, of course, we've got a resistance buff here. We've got constant minor protection. We've got a heal if we want it. And if we go low health, we are going to take less damage. The only thing you have to watch out with Vampire is that fire damage obviously is heightened, which means if it's a really, really stressful situation, there's lots of fire on the ground, try to find your feet. Try not to stand in it for too long. You can survive fire phases, execute phases with fire at stage 4 or 3. Absolutely fine, but make sure you keep your buffs up. Anything else that isn't an execute phase that doesn't require you to deliberately stand in it, get out of it. Now, of course, Fighter's Guild, this is where it starts to make a little bit more sense. As you know, we have a 15% increase to weapon damage in our medium armor skills. We have a 6% increase in our Templar skills. We also have this here, which is a 3% increase for each Fighter's Guild ability slotted. Of course, Intimidating Presence you do need, gets your cost down of your abilities from the skill line. But this one here, 1 ability, 2, and the Dawnbreaker is 3. We actually have a 9% weapon damage bonus on our front bar for having those 3 skills there. So this is your Beast Trap and kind of damage over time and increase to crit damage. This is our heal and protection for the group. This is our main ultimate. These belong here. They're not just there for the sake of it. They do something as well. And we get the passives. It's win-win. Banish the Wicked you're going to need, by the way. You generate ultimate for each undead, daedra, or werewolf killed. That is killed by you, by the way. Doesn't mean they die next to you, but from someone else. You have to physically kill them, and if you do, you'll get 9 ultimate for each one. Taking into account our ultimate is really, really cheap, only 119. This is very, very helpful indeed. Now, of course, on the back bar, don't forget, when it comes to weapon damage, you can put Circle Protection on the back bar instead of Vigor or instead of Repentance. The reason for that, again, is 3% bonus. But we get 6 because the Dawnbreaker is on both bars. Oh, you will need this, by the way. Because we are using Fighters Guild abilities passively, or actively even, we're actually using the ultimate, we're using the Beast Trap. If you're up against Undead, Daedra, or Werewolves, you will do 20% more damage. So this is very, very strong. Undaunted is essential. This one here, every single synergy you take in the game will be beneficial. It will do damage, it will protect you, it will give you a shield, it will give you a heal, it will give you something. Take the synergies, and for doing so, you will gain back 4% of all of your resources, health, magic, and stamina. Every single synergy you take, you get stuff back. Make sure you do it. The synergies are not just for the tank. And guess what? If they're crying about spears, look what we've got here. I can't pick that up. Stop crying, tank. You take it. Problem solved. Now, of course, Undaunted Metal is very important. We are using 3 different types of armor. 1 heavy, 1 light, 5 medium. Each different type we wear will give us 2% to our max health, max stamina, and max magicka. That's why we've got 6% across the board. Now, of course, an Orc. This will increase our max stamina by 2k. This will increase our max health by 1k and heal us once every 4 seconds from doing damage with a weapon ability. So, while inside our rune focus, remember our heals are higher. I just healed off my light attack. 2, 3, 4, and again. That's a 1k heal from a crit. And that is supposed to be 648. So you can crit it, you can get extra heals out of it from heal and received. If you've got heal and received bonuses from your group, that will get even stronger. Every 4 seconds, just for doing your damage, you can actually heal off it. It's really, really nice. And of course, we have a flat weapon damage bonus. We have multiple stacking weapon damage bonuses on this setup. It's absolutely huge, which is why it's so easy for us to get really high weapon damage when we're actually in combat. And we'll just underline that a little bit. We'll hit this big dummy here because he's got buffs. Not all of them, but he's got some. We will pop our back bar bonus and our Dawnbreaker. We are currently on 7.2k weapon damage, almost 7.3. We haven't even got Minor Courage yet. and that will give us even more. We don't even have Powerful Assault yet, and that will give us even more. We can actually almost crack 8k weapon damage actively in combat. Really, really powerful. Now, of course, finally, medicinal use. Most important passive in the game, in my opinion. You've heard it 100 times before in my videos. Our potions last 30% longer if you have this passive. So, max out your alchemy, get medicinal use 3, and dump all the rest of the points if you don't want to make potions. This is very, very important because our crafted potions will last 36 seconds, but because of this passive, they last 47. The cooldown is 45. We can have them up 100% of the time. Don't just use them when you go low, use them all the time because they have buffs in them. Now, we are, of course, using these here, which are weapon pots. They will give you major brutality, major savagery, and major endurance, increasing our stamina recovery by 20%. It will give us a stamina boost back, so we get 7582, and of course we have 20% increase to weapon damage, and we have a 10% crit bonus. The crit bonus is already on us because we have it on our jabs. So technically, you don't need it in the potion. But if you are in a situation where, one, you're rich because you've picked up loads of dragon blood, and 2, you have a Dragon Knight, for example, giving you major brutality in your group, which is igneous weapons. It's an actual group buff for major brutality now. It used to be just for the person, while sorcery used to cover people, but now you can get it from them as well. If you have that already, you can actually use the newer potions since Elsweyr, where you have a stam return, you have major endurance, but you also have minor heroism, which will increase your ultimate regen. So you can use those potions in those situations. So you don't always have to use weapon pots. You can sometimes use those instead. But make sure that you've always got brutality present. And if you don't, then of course use this. Now, we're going to go into the gear. We have some options. There is a, we'll call it basic setup. We'll call it non-trial setup. But then there are, of course, options for trial stuff. So, first of all, we are still using Briarheart like we were before. 1 Nirnhoned Axe and 1 Sharpened Dagger. We are using poisons, which are made with Nirnroot, Fleshfire Lava, and Nightshade. And these will apply 2 dots. So while you're using your weapon abilities, you will apply 2 dots to the target. And then when they run out, there'll be a cooldown. You can put them back on again. Very, very powerful indeed. Now, what Briarheart does is it will give you a crit chance, a stam bonus, another crit chance, but when you deal critical damage, you have a 10% chance to increase your weapon damage by 449 for 10 seconds, which is ridiculously high. And while it's active, your critical strikes will actually heal you for 609 health. Remember, we have minor mending for having this down. Well, while we're doing damage, if Briarheart is firing, you will heal, and this will boost it. So just bear that in mind. Now, we've deliberately put this on the front bar. We've got the jewelry, with 2 infused and 1 bloodthirsty, with weapon damage on each one, and we've got 2 weapons. You don't want the weapons on both bars, because the proc does have a cooldown. We want the cooldown, if we can help it, to fall off as we swap bars, and we don't want it to be off while we're on the front bar. It's 10 seconds up, 5 seconds down. The 15-second cooldown starts as soon as the 10 seconds starts, so there is a slight gap. Now, what you're looking for, by the way, we'll put some damage on just to make it happen. There it goes. You're looking for this. See, my hands are glowing, and they're making a funny noise. That's every time I'm critting, it's healing me. So it looks like a helmet with antlers on it in your buff timers. Now, the other set on the back bar is actually the Master's Bow, not the Maelstrom Bow. But if you have the Maelstrom Bow, that's fine. But the Master's Bow actually outperformed. You want this infused, and you want a weapon and spell damage increase on this particular weapon. Now, if you don't have the Master's Weapon, you can put an agility weapon on your back bar, and you will be just fine. You will have increased stamina on your back bar. You won't get the benefit from this weapon, but you will get a little bit extra on your back bar, so that will help. So don't panic. You can even put a crafted one on the back for the time being if you prefer. But essentially, you want to go for the Master's Bow. This doesn't show in your stats. This affects the target. So what you want to do is make sure Poison Injection stays up, and now I'll hit him harder. If Poison Injection is on him and him, I'll hit them harder. He will get hit for less. So just bear that in mind. Poison Injection must stay up, and then you can smash things to bits faster. So that's really important. The reason we're using Fuse, by the way, is because the weapon damage glyph, if you look on my buff timers at the bottom there, you will see one that looks like a sword. Watch it reapply itself. Even though I'm on the front bar, it just reapplied itself. Infused, obviously, means it's stronger and it has a shorter cooldown. Now, Any damage over time, area of effect, weapon abilities can consistently proc the glyph from the weapon it was fired from, no matter what bar you're on, until the dot runs out. Single target ones, however, will not. As you can see here, I will make it fire. That's a single target dot. That is going to run out and stay off. And it's gone. You have to make sure you use area of effect weapon abilities. So your volley is very important. Don't let it run out, otherwise your glyph will fall off. Now, we are using Krag as a monster set. We are using 1 heavy and 1 light. It's very important. Stamina on both, Mundus on both, so we are utilizing our Shadow Mundustone as much as we possibly can. This has a penetration bonus, which is mental, alongside of our sharpened weapon, actually. So we've got really high pen. That is also considered in our champion points, by the way. And when you deal damage, you've seen it already, you get 2 arms above your head, and they wave around a bit, and there's loads and loads of damage going out in front of you every 0.4 seconds for 1.2 seconds, with a 3-second cooldown. That means that this can basically fire 1.8 seconds after it has finished. It's really, really fast. And if you haven't seen it already, which you should have done if you were watching, there we go. That wave that hits all of them, now it can fire again. There you go. Once you've got all your dots running, you can hear it. It's like a little shockwave. It will happen a lot more often. You're looking for the arms anyway. It's constant. Once you've got your damage running, it's going to happen all the time. Very, very fast-paced damage over time monster set. And that is very beneficial versus 2 choices of the next setup. Now, the rest of the gear, you got Briarheart, Master's Bow, and Krag so far. Deadly. This has a flat weapon damage bonus, a crit chance, another flat weapon damage bonus, and increases your damage over time from all physical, poison, and bleed and disease effects by 14%. Why is that important? This is damage over time. So is this, so is this, so is this, so is this. This is not damage over time that will be affected by it because it's magic damage and it does direct damage from the Burn and Light passive. But this is damage over time and so is this. So basically almost everything that we're doing is physical damage over time to some extent. And of course consider the fact that we are utilizing poisons which are also affected. So Deadly boosts almost everything that we do. And it has a massive weapon damage bonus on it. It's got 2 huge bonuses. So this is absolutely nuts. You can get very good numbers with this in content. And if we're talking dummy numbers, this obviously does less than one of the other options, which I'm going to show you. But it's not far off. It's very close. Now, another option is, of course, I've been through a lot of stuff here. A lot of it's been destroyed as well. Azure Blight. And this is nuts. If you haven't seen it already, there's a video on my YouTube channel. Saying 1 million area of effect DPS. Basically what this does is gives us a crit bonus, a recovery bonus, and a stand bonus, which is nice. But when you deal damage with a damage over time ability, which we do, by the way, jabs does not count for this. Although it is a dot, it doesn't fire this set. This will deal damage in area of effect, like an explosion, if you stack 20 dots together, or 20 dot ticks. And this can happen per target. So we're going to demonstrate this if I've got the full set on me. You have probably seen this before if you've watched the Cleave build, but this does work very effectively on this as well. So all you need to do is put these dots on. Put some more dots on and a Dawnbreaker. Watch for explosions. There they go. Each one will start blowing up and they all hit each other and it can constantly happen. Once you get really into the swing of your rotations, that is a very, very effective set. Especially in area of effect, and Krag actually works very, very well alongside of that. Also, his Krag is boosted by Deadly, by the way. This really fast-paced proc that hits multiple targets actually counts as additional stacks towards that set, so that's a very good choice as well. But you've got 2 choices here, 2 main choices. You've got Deadly or Azure. Now, if you really, really, really want to go that extra mile and you like doing trials and such, you do not have to have the perfected version, by the way. You'll have 1k less stamina, but you don't have to do the perfected version. You can go for Reliquin. Reliquin will give you 2 crit bonuses, 5% overall damage output for trials, dungeons, and arenas. And, of course, your light attacks and heavy attacks will put a stack of wind on the target, doing X amount of damage every second for 5 seconds. Every 1 second is a cooldown before your next light attack before it can actually stack another wind. So if you stack really, really fast light attacks, it won't make a difference. Like here's 1 wind. Now when you go really, really fast, it's 3, it's 4. It's taking its time. There is a gap. You have to wait for a second. So once you fire this, do another one, Every 1 second, if you fire off a light attack, it will stack another win. It'll get stronger and stronger and stronger. As soon as you stop doing that, it will fall off. And you lose all your damage. You have to be active with your light attacks on both bars to keep that buff up 100% of the time. If you can't, you've got two options. Practice or take it off. Now, you can get the regular Reliquant from normal trials, so do not panic. It's not the end of the world if you don't have Perfected. The normal one will be just fine. So, the options you've got, flat out, are, of course, Deadly, Azure, or Reliquant. If you are not in a position to even farm some of this stuff, maybe you haven't got enough money to go buy Deadly, or you don't do PvP, or maybe you haven't got into any dungeons yet, maybe you're quite new, you can of course craft Hundan's Rage. It will be significantly lower, but you can use the crafted set for the time being while farming other stuff. But top choices for me would be Deadly, Azure, and of course if you can go for it, Reliquant all the way. Now we have one more option. If you want to be that guy to buff your group, you can go with War Machine on your front bar and take off Briarheart. You can still have your Reliquant, you can still have your Deadly, or whichever you prefer, but you can take off Briarheart for the increased weapon damage. You can replace it with War Machine. This is going a little bit further, by the way. If you apply an ultimate, you and 2 other allies within 28 meters of you will be granted Major Slayer. So if anyone's not using Loki, you start buffing them. This, by the way, is very, very beneficial standing beside my Toxicity build. Now, you will drop a tiny bit of single target damage. You'll lose about 3k yourself, but you will buff 2 more people. So you'll keep damage up, but you'll buff 2 others. If you do that, you need to change something. And what you would need to change is you would need to change this front bar ultimate. And you would change it to Empower and Sweep. You'll lose your weapon damage on the front bar, you'll lose your flat weapon damage overall, but you will be able to spam this ultimate once every second rotation without fail, and you will keep up that Major Slayer as much as you can. So that is an option. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for most situations, but if you can get away with it, then go for it. Failing that, you can of course put it on the body, and then Empower Sweep can go on the back bar. If that happens, you will then benefit from increased light attack damage as well, which doesn't actually give you a higher damage output overall, because it then levels out with the amount of weapon damage that we get from Dawnbreaker. So you've got some options. You can put it on the body if you want to keep Briarheart. You can put it on the weapons if you want to keep your overall damage output from Reliquant. But whichever version you choose to take, you will need to decide which bar your Empower and Sweep will go on. If it's on your body, you can put it on the back, and then you won't lose your weapon damage on the front. If it's on your weapons, you need it on the front, because it's the only way you can fire it to make the set proc. Hopefully that wasn't too complicated. That is a choice, not a requirement. Flat out, Deadly, Azure, or Rally. Now, I'm going to go into champion points, and I'm going to explain the rotation. Red stuff is pretty much the same as everything else. You can change these depending on the content. 72 points into Ironclad to reduce the amount of damage we take from direct damage. 64 and 64 for a 13% reduction to everything else, or everything flat out, regardless of its damage type, in fact. 19% reduction to damage over time, and of course we've got Unchained. So this is very important. If we break free, our next stamina ability is 80% cheaper, so that's when you want to throw down a Circle of Protection. 90 points into Quick Recovery to increase our healing received. That includes heals that we do, or heals that other people do. This obviously is important because we res very, very fast. While you are resurrecting another player, your damage taken is reduced by 15%, so you're tanky while you pick up people up. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 in Tenacity to increase the amount of return we get from a heavy attack. Sometimes you might be quite low on stamina, you got a heavy attack. This will give us more back. 75 points into Recovery as well. Just bear in mind, if you go to 100, it's going to cost you 25 points to get that extra 1%. It's not worth it. You'll waste unnecessary points. Go 75, no further. 72 into Tumbling to give us a 23% reduction to Dodge Roll. 4 into Shadow Ward, because honestly I've got nowhere else to put them. But then in doing so, we have actually unlocked Treasure Hunter passive, which means we get higher quality items from chests. Very handy when you're farming the shiny stuff. Nothing in here. 56 in Master at Arms to increase our direct damage, and Physical Weapons Expert has got 9 points in it to increase our light attacks and heavy attacks. 61 into Thermatears to increase our damage over time. 61 in Precise Strikes to increase our critical damage, which is already really, really high, by the way. 34 into Pearson. I normally go 61 here, but we don't need to because we've got Krag on here, which is another 1.4k reduction to our overall need for physical penetration. So we can actually use our other points elsewhere, which is why we've got loads to put into these. 49 into Mighty, increasing all of our physical, poison, and disease damage by 11% as well. Now I'm going to explain the rotation. Really simple stuff. So, First of all, you want to make sure that your rune focus is active because you want that resistance buff and you want the huge amount of recovery. Then you want to put your beast trap down. Now, what you need to do, once your basic stuff is down, so beast trap is important, so is your rune focus, you want to start on your back bar with volley. So volley, light attack, poison injection, light attack, spear shards, swap bars. So quite simple. Volley, light, poison, light, spears, swap. Now, every second rotation, you'll want to replace your rune. You want to put it back down again. So volley, light, poison injection, light, rune focus, light, spear, swap. You only put that down every second rotation. That will give you an extra light attack on your bow bar, so you will have to be careful and make sure your rotation is clean, because otherwise volley will run out a bit quicker. But essentially, that's all you need to do on the back bar. On the front bar, when you come round to the front bar, it's very, very simple. Light attack, rend and slashes. Light attack, soul trap. Light attack, jabs, 3 times. Light attack, beast trap, swap. Volley, light, poison, light, spear, swap. Light rending, light soul trap, light jabs, light jabs, light jabs, light beast trap, swap. Oh no, my rune fell off. Volley, light, poison, light, rune, light, spear, swap. Again, very simple. Light rending, light soul trap, 3 jabs with a light attack between each one. Light beast trap, swap. Doesn't get any simpler than that. Every time your Dawnbreaker is ready, hit it. What I would encourage you to do, however, is try to use your Dawnbreaker as soon as you get to the front bar. But if it pops halfway through, make sure that you pop it before your beast trap, because you don't want to cast it then swap bars, because it will cancel. You want to cast it, then use your beast trap swap as your filler, so you can guarantee that it doesn't cancel itself. Now I'm going to show you a quick target dummy demonstration. Just bear in mind, of course, we are spec'd for a mixture of single target and area effect. Not a massive amount of area effect, but of course just consider this does hit everything, whereas most spammables do not. So that's really, really important. I am going to use my flat stam and recovery food to demonstrate the fact that we could have best case scenario. So the ceiling isn't quite there with a target dummy. It doesn't have major vulnerability. It doesn't have major slayer on it. It doesn't have minor courage on it. There's a couple more things missing as well. But regardless, we're going to go with recovery food to demonstrate what it could be like if you were to have an abundance of synergies. And of course, maybe a couple of Dwemer spiders running around the room. Because 2 Dwemer spiders in the group, on average, considering their cooldowns, plus maybe just 1 master staff, is enough to give you this amount of recovery. Especially if you're picking up synergies. Here we go. So hopefully that helped, hopefully it wasn't too boring, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. Very simple rotation, easy to acquire gear to some extent, and of course a harder version if you want to go that extra mile. Anyway, first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support, and if you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside of the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, the website XynodeGaming.com, where all the written guides are, including the new All About Mechanics trial guides, by the way. They are now coming. Don't forget also, I do live stream every single night on Twitch from 10 PM UK time, unless I say otherwise on Twitter. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.